Greetings, everyone. I wanted to welcome you this evening to a wonderful opportunity for sophomore parents to learn a little bit more from our Office of Personal Career Development about internship and career opportunities. My name is Brad McElwain. I am part of the Office of Family Engagement, and our office is very proud to be working together with the Office of Personal Career Development and bringing to our parents 5 different Zoom meetings similar to tonight that have focused on different classes, and even one that focused on students that are studying abroad. I think you're going to find the next hour to be incredibly informative. I think it's going to be some great information. I think you're going to find the important part is encouraging your students to be able to reach out and be part of the services that are available that you're going to hear more about it tonight. And I think you'll find it to, again, be very beneficial. I want to start tonight with an introduction to Andy Chan. Andy is the Vice President for Innovation and Career Development at Wake Forest. He came to Wake 12 years ago from Stanford and created a program that has become a national leader in career services. He has put together a staff that is remarkable, and the services they provide to students are things that I think you'd be very proud of. Andy's vision is something that has made it something that is very tangible for students to be able to work with. I think you're going to find tonight's an example of how we want to be able to communicate with parents. Before I turn it over to Andy, just a couple of housekeeping notes. You can make or submit any questions in our Q&A, and there's no question too small. We want you to submit those. If you have a specific panelist in mind, please mention that in your question. We also are going to try to answer those questions directly or maybe hand those off to panelists. So we'll get to as many of those things as we can, both individually and part of the presentation. But at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Andy, and thank you, everybody, for being part of it tonight.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate your help in pulling this together and all that you do with the Family Engagement Office, you and your team with Minta McNally, Anne Marie Carr, and everyone else that all the support services we provide for families. You all do a great job. So we just really appreciate you. I'm Andy Chan. I'm very happy to be here today to speak with you, to talk a bit about what the overall marketplace looks like for internships and jobs, the overall college to career process or even graduate school process for students at Wake Forest, and with particular focus tonight on sophomores. I will be having conversations with different people on my team. One of those people is Stuart Meese. Stuart actually oversees our employer relations area as well as all of our data and technology area. He's been in this business for a long time. I think as long as I have, it feels like over 20 years probably, where we've learned a lot about like the whole pathway from college to career. And we have a lot that we'd love to tell you about and share with you. I'll also be bringing Heidi Robinson, who is one of our leaders in the Office of Personal Career Development over coaching and training and education, and teaches and leads all of our college to career courses. And then Mike Crespi, who oversees our coaching and education process for the business school. So we'll be able to talk about both. And we'll also do the best we can to answer all your questions that you put into the Q&A as we go along. So Stuart's joined us, and Stuart, thanks for joining us tonight. One of the first questions that I like to always start with is, what's the general state of the market? It's a weird time. We hear about this thing called the Great Resignation, and we also hear that there's tons of jobs out there. Employers can't find people. What are you seeing from where you sit?
Yeah, well, thanks for having us, Andy and Brad, for putting it on. Thanks to all the parents for participating. Glad to share what we know about the market. And right now, it's really, really good. There's more opportunities than there are people. Since March, when the first vaccine became available, we've seen the opportunities in our handshake system, the platform we use to connect employers and students, double. And applications have gone up about 20-25% each year from 20 to 21, and now another 20-25% from 21 to 22, but it's still not enough. There are tremendous opportunities available for folks. In a recent study by a guy we all enjoy out in Michigan State, he's been doing this for about 50 years. It seems like this recruiting trend survey. And they ask a question on the confidence level to employers in terms of how warm or hot or how many opportunities they're going to be created this upcoming year. not since before the Great Recession back in '08 has the confidence level from employers been this high. So one of the things that we see is opportunities exist if you have a billable skill or if you're generating revenue. That's kind of what's driving stuff. So regardless of the industry, sales, accounting, engineering, IT, anything around those roles are in very high demand, as is project management, finance, especially with the lower interest rates and all the work that's done around fintech is pretty hot right now, as is anything in data and Excel, and of course, computer programming. Those things are going to continue to be hot. So the main thing is students just need to engage. There's plenty of opportunities out there if they're interested.
One of the things that you just mentioned there is these particular skills. I think some students can learn them in the classroom based on their major. Can you give some suggestions on how students can build some of those skills if in fact they're majoring in something else that doesn't necessarily build those types of skills?
Yeah, a lot of it is just general curiosity. I mean, from a sales perspective, a stat that's been used long ago is that a person, if they have one sales class, they're over 90% more likely to get a job at graduation than if you don't have a sales class. Anything in Excel, working within Excel, and there's Coursera classes, LinkedIn, all these different types of things. Anything in Excel is going to be beneficial for you. In the project management space, your student can get the precursor to the PMP, Project Management Professional, by getting a CAPM certification. That would be differentiating. And then any type of curiosity or exposure to computer programming is going to be very beneficial down the road. So I think the great thing about the Wake Forest student is that they're just generally curious, gritty, hardworking individuals, and whatever they put their minds to, I think they can get the skill set. But it's focused, on that particular skill set and getting them there. That is the challenge, and you parents can help us with that by taking the information you glean from this and sharing it with your student to partner in helping us match the skill sets the market needs with what your students are trying to obtain.
That's great. Thank you, Stuart. And you made a good point right there, which is I know a lot of parents always ask us, are you giving all this information we're communicating to students? And we do try. We actually try to get them to hear us oftentimes, but we have found that sometimes students listen to their parents even more than they listen to us, believe it or not. And so I think any way we can just sort of push them along to be thinking about hearing this information really does work. And we obviously send a lot of this information in our newsletters and different emails and ways that we're communicating with them, which I think there was a question in the chat that Patrick answered related to that. One of the questions that I also am really curious about from your view is the whole area of recruiting and careers are changing due to this whole virtual shift given COVID and general trend to move in this direction. What are some of the things that you've seen, and how do you think that's impacting college student recruiting?
Well, just like a lot of industries, since COVID, everything is a 180. You went from employers coming to select campuses and getting in their face and presenting and trying to build that relationship on campus. Now, some of the larger brands are trying to use the equity that they have in their brand so they don't have to come to campus. What they found last year, the first year of COVID, was that the applications actually increased and they're more diverse by not even setting foot on campus. And the CFOs said, well, this is great. Our returns are great. And I'm not going to give you as much money anymore to do that recruiting. That may have been a 1-year issue. Most of the employers say that their budgets were kind of restored after that. But it's this issue of, well, if I don't have to send people and I can be as effective and efficient, then I don't necessarily have to do that. Now, in some industries, you may have to do it if you don't have that strong brand, or if you're trying to go after certain groups, so like diverse talent or software developers or accounting, you may have to come on campus and do that as well. And I think the other thing from a student perspective is now there's even more competition. because now you've got students at schools that typically companies weren't going to, either because of geography or just their ranking. Those students now can use technologies like Handshake and really position themselves in ways that they were not able to. So it's now requires more on the student to be prepared and to really get after it in terms of these opportunities, as opposed to just showing up in your, Farrell Hall Business School, and then you got all these employers here. That's not happening as frequently now. The preparation is important. Understanding market information like we're sharing right now, how to navigate the Handshake tool is important. How you show your brand, your personal brand in a box like we are right now, in the same way as if you're in a room. All of these things have changed within it. But at the end of the day, if the student has a skill set coupled with their time that the company feels like they can get a return off of, there's going to be opportunities out there for those individuals. So coming to a Wake Forest top 25 school, people know and respect that. I got, I think, 3 or 4 notes today from different employers said they want to do some more recruiting here with us. So the word is out. People know. Of course, everyone's looking for talent now, but they're coming to Wake still. So that hasn't changed.
Thanks for that perspective, Stuart. At least another good question that people oftentimes wonder is, how does your team work with employers, and what are kind of services we provide? What do employers say about recruiting Wake Forest students? Those type of things. I think some of the people in the audience might even have organizations or companies that are invested in that might want to recruit at Wake Forest. So what are the kinds of things that we can do to facilitate that?
Yeah, so just send me an email. We'd be glad to talk to you more about it. So, we try and establish that relationship and we stay in touch with you. We have account managers that divide up some of our top employers. And so our account managers have a portfolio that they manage within that. They help with interviewing, posting jobs, promoting jobs. We put on events. And we communicate things to students in our newsletters and other mediums. And then, of course, we're also it's what Andy was saying, manage all our Handshake functions. That's becoming the thing. Think of that as like LinkedIn for college students. And all of our data analysis that can be quite helpful for us down the road. We have, any company for the most part hires our students, from financial institutions to tech firms to consumer brands. I mean, it's really all over the board. We have a formula that I would call it the strategic employer service model of Wake Employer Network companies that we try and focus our efforts on. Same way any company would, with some of their top employers or customers that are out there. And we also evaluate based off of the Net Promoter Score, NPS. Many of you guys know that. That's typically in the 60s to low 70s. So that kind of puts you in the category of some of the top brands like a Ritz-Carlton that's out there. So we constantly monitor that of the people we interact with. As well. So we try to be very consultative to the employers right now by providing something that they just can't get anywhere else. And that's worked well for us. We do employer calls, we do market updates, we send them newsletters, just small little things that make them feel special, that kind of differentiate us. And that's what we try to do. And it's worked well for us up to this point.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think that's one of the keys about even why we do these types of conversations, is we're trying to let parents know your firms could recruit at Wake Forest. We can help that with that. And then also we do the same with alumni. So we actually have a whole channel where we're trying to both help alumni as they think about managing their careers, but also the channel of coming back to work with your team to hire students, and also be available to speak to students in networking ways and connecting with them. And we actually have a whole channel on LinkedIn called the Wake Forest Career Connectors Group, who are alumni who have said, I'm really interested in helping other students. And so we try to help them that way. So yeah, we really try to work the network pretty hard, because we know that, people have an affinity towards Wake Forest, they're going to be more likely to hire our students. And that's what you've seen very clearly by creating our, sort of Wake Forest employer network. That's really benefited our students to be able to find jobs that are more sort of likely to get hired than other just jobs where there's no one there who actually knows anything about Wake Forest.
That's right. We want to provide them with some data and information that can increase the probability of them getting jobs using historical data and other information from the market. Internships are important. It's not everything, but it is important. It's probably more important in certain fields where they hire directly from that intern pool, say like investment banking, and so forth. Any type of internship is going to be beneficial because it's either going to validate what you thought you wanted to do, it's going to contradict what you thought you want to do. It's going to give you some experience to talk about the next interview that you get. And I think the main thing, if you had to kind of rank the ones that you want, and this is not necessarily for the sophomores, but from a junior perspective next year, once they between their junior and senior year, you do want to try and find intern programs that will convert to full-time. And so those that do it best, they'll have a feeder program of these interns, and then they try and offer from that to fill their full-time classes. And so that may be something you want to be aware of. A number of internships, they're just looking for free or cheap labor to do a project for a couple of weeks, where you're looking, while that's helpful in some cases, you also want to see the investment by the company try and convert those interns to full-time hires. And Big Four accounting firms probably do it better than anyone else in terms of leveraging their intern pools for full-time hires.
So Stuart, I have one final question, and part of it is related to how to think about the schedule for sort of internship, summer job recruiting. Describe the difference between the sort of bigger firms and the firms that do more traditional recruiting versus those that do more just in time, and also talk a little bit about the difference between those that are, what we tend to think of as like the big business sort of companies versus those that might be in healthcare or that do public policy or government or PR or marketing, those types of organizations. Can you just speak to that? Because I think sometimes when we talk, people think all we're talking about are like the big companies recruiting hundreds, of, not thousands of people.
Yeah. So, starting with the big companies, they subscribe to early bird gets the worm. They want to get the best talent as early in the process as possible. And they can forecast their demand ahead of time. Bigger, if they miss out on a couple of interns, it's not going to kill them because they're hiring hundreds at a time. So your consulting firms, accounting firms, they can forecast that. They've been doing this model for quite some time. Now, if you shift over to say like hospitality and tourism management, where their demand is often more cyclical, it's more just in time, they may be waiting more toward the spring period for that because they don't want to get ahead of it. Advertising, PR firms, same way. A lot of those opportunities are done, say, in the late spring when they've closed the deal and they need some more people to come in and help, especially that's the case with the full-time side of things. In years past, what you would see is internships. A lot of companies would kind of focus in the fall. This is a general statement. They'd focus on this full-time in the fall, and then they'd start looking for some of the extern or internship programs in the spring. I think what's happened now, just because of the way virtual recruiting is, everything is spread out a lot more. So beforehand, we would say like 2/3 of college recruiting was done in the fall because they're trying to get the best of the best and will be done. So you don't have to do as much in the spring. Now things are being drawn out a little bit more because not all the firms are getting the type of talent that they want, especially some of these small to medium size. So they're having to expand it out a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to see what will happen in the spring with that. Will the big companies get everything that they need this particular fall? We already expect that some of the smaller companies, they're just going to have to keep going into the spring to get the demand that they need.
Yep.
A lot of that is, cyclical at this point, and a lot of it's going to be determined, I think, on what happens with inflation and the global energy crisis, and what's happening there with that. It could all come to a halt pretty quickly in the next couple of months. Hopefully that's not the case, but those larger factors certainly impact college recruiting. That's why it's so very important that we stay on top of all these different market conditions.
That's great. Thank you, Stuart. I think an important thing for people to know is that um, it's not everyone works at big companies for certain. Like, you know, at Wake Forest, I think maybe only 10% work at very large organizations and the other 90 work at very small organizations. And oftentimes they're the only intern from Wake Forest at that organization. So it's not like everyone has to do everything that, you know, that everyone else does. The second is that it doesn't end at, you know, December 1st and there's like no internships for the rest of the year. There's actually a lot of internships that happen through the rest of the spring. It is really important though for students to come into the office and actually get their materials together so they can actually apply for jobs and be a good candidate. So that's an important dimension to think about. And that we'll talk with Heidi and Mike a little bit about some of the nuances for some of the more sort of intense industries. But I think the main thing is that in full time, when it gets to senior year, it's amazing. You know, I think by the time we get to graduation, somewhere between 50 to 60% of students actually have either jobs or grad school figured out. And that's still another 40% still tend to be looking after graduation for a lot of different reasons. And so I think it's important for us to sort of know that, you know, if students set a goal, they want a job at graduation, they have to really think ahead and plan with us on how to get there. A lot of students leave it to the last minute, so they get the job after graduation, but they still get great jobs. It's not like only the good people hire before graduation and all the bad people hire after, by no means at all. So I think it's important for people to just understand, like, the employer cycles are not always the same as the school cycles. All right, Stuart, there's a ton of questions on that, the Q&A that I think you might be able to answer with links to a lot of content on our website. So maybe you can go take a look at that. Let's bring Mike and Heidi out for now. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you.
All right, hi Heidi, hi Mike. Lots of questions we got from parents, both, you know, real time, but also that were handed to us beforehand. So we'll get right into it. And we'll try to get through a lot of them as opposed to going deep on any one of them at any point. So Heidi, first, just talk a bit about how does the OPCD work with sophomore students, and what are the key things that sophomore students should be thinking about doing in the office, in particular, you know, meeting with coaches or not, and how do they get assigned or not, that kind of thing.
So first, good evening, everyone. We're so glad you're here. And we're so glad that you're supporting your sophomores like as you are, and being here and getting more information. We really want to meet your sophomore. Some of the things that are happening right now, I mean, I would say if you had seen our lobby this afternoon, you would say that one of the big things that's happening right now is the resume review. So one of the things that I would encourage your student to know about is the fact that Monday through Thursday, they can come up and drop in for a resume review or a coaching drop-in appointment. So we're supporting students by making sure that your sophomore does have all of their tools together, as Andy was referencing. And then I would say that some of the other things that your student may or may not know about, we have an internship clinic every single week, and students come in and get real momentum when they're in there. They come out with their tools, they have a strategy, and they're thinking about the ways that they can begin applying. And they have some of the market information that Stuart was just sharing. And that's so important for the sophomore to understand that there are opportunities out there that are specifically for them. One of the other things I think about for particularly our sophomores who are working out things related to majors and how does my major actually connect to the careers I'm interested in? That's one of the things our coaches really want to sit with those students and think about, and go ahead and let them work through some of those options, and to look at our data to see where do specific majors go. If you'll go on our website under Explore Careers, you'll see that under Explore, and Explore Majors, we have all of our data, our outcomes from our first destination survey. So both parents and students can look and see, where do Spanish majors go? Where do econ majors go? And how does that differ from some of the other options that are out there for my student? That lets the student have good information, and it lets parents understand kind of what that relationship is for students at Wake Forest. So one of the last things that I would say is that we have seen real success with for our sophomores is our resume clinics. And those are happening twice a week. And again, students come out with real momentum. We're really trying to be sure that as sophomores, they have a strategy related to their personal branding so that they are ready when they see things that are interesting to them. So those are kind of the things, Andy, that I think about as key components. And then just asking them to go ahead and sample different career coaches to find the person that's their fit. They are going to have all of this time at Wake Forest to go ahead and meet with that person. So finding the coach that actually aligns with who they are and their style is really important. And our coaches are fabulous and have lots of expertise in many different areas. So those are sort of the highlights that I would give.
That was great, Heidi. Thank you very much for that really quick summary of all that students can do and they can get going right now. Let's go over to Mike for a second. So a lot of times, Mike, students get asked either by others or by what's in the media that they need to focus early and choose a major that leads to a good job. And that actually exploring and trying to figure things out on your own and figure out your own direction is not a good thing to do. And was curious, we had some parents ask us, is that good advice? Like, what should I be telling my child? So it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you, Andy, and thanks for everyone who's on the call tonight. That is a great question. And the way I look at it is if you're looking at investment banking and you're looking at management consulting, they start early. They're looking for raw talent. They're looking for great talent. They want the best of the best. And oftentimes that will be a direction that students begin to think about. They say, oh, I got to be in finance to be in investment banking. And then the investment bankers tell you, yeah, but we hire a lot of people that aren't finance majors. And I've heard everywhere from 40 to 60% because they want diversity of thought. They want diversity of backgrounds. I'm an explore person. I think you should explore. You should be exploring all the time. Have 3 different paths that maybe you're looking at. Continue to think, hey, where do my skills and desires align? I think it's also one of those things where those of us that have had career for a while, we're not where we started, are we? We ended up going somewhere else. And it's all tied to these skill sets. So I'm less inclined about pursuing that major unless it's a major that's specific to a given career. For example, if you want to be an interpreter, then you probably need to major in that language to understand the culture and the language. But perhaps you want a specialty degree like a CPA. Well, then accounting is going to be the major, because it leads to that aspect. Engineering is the same thing. So there are some that are very specific, but I would say overall, use this time to explore and see what could be.
Great, Mike. Thank you very much for that answer. Heidi, do you want to add anything on top of that?
Just to support what Mike was saying, looking to see, to compare, for example, where econ majors go, major that's in the college, alongside where students in the business school go, can really go ahead and give parents some context to exactly what Mike was saying, and just sort of support this idea of understanding the breadth of things and that students can explore, and that this is a good time for them to be thinking that through.
That's great. Yeah, there was a question in the Q&A about like majoring in something where it's going to lead to a career. And I do think, as Mike said, there are a few where that's the case, but there are many that are not. And I think it's really important for a student to do the exploration, understand what is the difference and where is the few that it really matters. And then do I really want to go work in those areas? Because oftentimes we make decisions based on limited information and we didn't really go out and do the research. So I think that's one of the things we really try to teach students to do. Let's talk about the college to career courses, Heidi. You and I know that this is the most effective way for students to really become career ready, to become employable, not only while they're a student at Wake Forest, but for the rest of their lives. Can you talk about those, why they're so important, and how students can get into them?
Oh, yes. I'm so well, I think right now is a great time for us to be talking about it because registration is happening. And so one of the things that we have seen is that students who are in college to career courses, in other words, in a structured place where they are supported and exposed to both resources, but also get the time to go ahead and do this kind of work, they have higher levels of confidence, higher levels of exploration, and it won't be surprising at all that they have higher levels of engagement. So what happens is we bring students into the courses and then they get some momentum, and this whole thing ends up being a whole lot less anxiety provoking. Most students would rather put off some of this work that we do in the college to career courses because it seems intimidating and hard to do by yourself. So part of the magic of the career courses is that students get support while they're doing this work. They get success, and then they also see that they have some momentum. And I would say that's probably one of the key factors.
Great, thank you, Heidi. And oh, can you make sure the names of the courses? So they
Absolutely.
know where to look for it?
Sure. The courses are housed in our education department. And so as a sophomore, I would love to see sophomores complete EDU 120, that's the course number, which is Personal Framework for Career Exploration, and EDU 220, Options in the World of Work. They're all 1.5 credits and half semester. So a student truly can take 2 of the courses and really get they get so excited, and sometimes I don't see them for the rest of the course series because they've gotten so much that they can actually do it on their own, and that's very exciting to us. So EDU 120, EDU 220, 1.5 credits and half semester.
Thanks, Heidi. Actually, Patrick has provided links inside the Q&A and inside the chat so that if anyone wants to open up their web browser and be able to have that as something to share with their student, that's something to definitely take a look at. Let's go to another topic, Mike. Some students are very interested in finance and investment banking. Can you talk a little bit about just the process for that type of recruiting? What, as a sophomore, someone should be thinking about, given that that's the one of the industries where people like really come early and want students to be well prepared. What kind of things do students need to know, and what kind of things do we do to help them?
It's a great question because the recruiting has gotten earlier and earlier and earlier in both those areas. So what we've done in partnership with the employer relations team and Stewart's group is work with employers for information sessions, particularly in the fall term, so that students get this awareness of what is consulting, what is investment banking, what is private equity, what is asset management, et cetera. And so in Handshake, they get to put together their career interests. And then the information gets pushed out to the students. So it's very important that the sophomores have their career interests up to date in Handshake, so they get this information in a timely manner so they can learn what it's all about, particularly during the fall term. Come the spring term, we actually put on group workshops that are specific to a given area. So we actually did some this fall too in the investment banking space, but in the spring, it could be a Wells Fargo or another company like EY could do a session about how to interview in this space. And the students get to come and they get to hear from industry on how it works. We had alumni from consulting last year, how to do a case interview, how to approach it, how to break it down. And we had 2 of them working together, one being the interviewer, the other one being the interviewee. And they spent the time to demonstrate to the students how it worked for their firm. So a lot of these things go on during the fall and spring term, but it keeps coming back. Make sure your information's up to date in Handshake so that we can push the information to you so you can participate.
Great. Mike, can you talk about the Finance Career Pathways newsletter?
Oh, absolutely. That we have actually 4 Pathways newsletters. We have finance, we have consulting, marketing, and STEM analytics. What's really interesting about these, they go out weekly, usually Monday evening, Monday afternoon, and it pushes information to students who have signed up who are interested in this space, and they can sign up for more than one of these areas. And inside these newsletters, they'll have Handshake tips, they'll have some coaching advice, but then they'll also have information about the employers and some special events that could be coming up in the near term. And then there is a listing of top roles that are available to students, and it's a single click. They click on it, they go right into Handshake, and they can apply. And then there's usually a button at the bottom that says all opportunities available for banking or finance, all opportunities available for consulting. So it becomes a great tool for students to be able to have easy access.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Someone had a question about just Wake Washington, and I know there's an internship program with Wake Washington. Heidi, can you talk a little bit about how that whole program works, just briefly at a very high level? I know that people can go to the website to find more, but just maybe you can give a high level overview.
I think that this is one of the jewels here at Wake Forest among many, but one of the things that is really special about Wake Washington is that students it's a semester away, and they have an internship in DC, and at the same time they're taking coursework. Wake has its own campus on DuPont Circle. And it's a wonderful way for students to get not only professional experience, but also to be able to maintain their levels, their way toward their path toward graduation, and really get a feel for that kind of work that happens in DC, right there at the center of things.
Great, thank you, Heidi. Mike, we do a lot with international students. Can you talk a little bit about how we help the international students thinking about their employment and internship opportunities?
Absolutely. We begin work in partnership, the business school and the college, with first-year students and the international who are international, and we follow up during their sophomore year as well. And we have sessions that help, and we work in partnership with the International Student Services team as well. So what it means is, what is curricular practical training? What is occupational practical training? How does that relate? How do the rules work in employment for international students? But at the same time, we then will have things like rotational tables, how to select a major, what are the majors. We'll have student panels. They love the student panels of other international students. They think it's the best thing because they tell them what they did. We teach them how to network. We teach them what resources are available to them. And we do this in small group sessions so that these students can have conversation and not just be lectured, so that they're engaged with it. And we also partner with the Globe, which is an international student organization, and they actually are part of our planning team. So they're the ones that actually, this is what we need. This is what, and then we say, okay, can we provide this? And then they communicate it out to fellow students. And when students hear it from other students, they attend and learn from us. And it's just a great, great opportunity.
Great, great. And I think we have a whole page on our website for international students, both in the business school and the college. So if you have an international student, make sure you take a look at all the resources we have there. So Heidi, one question that was asked was a bit about how we help students with respect to like their own self-assessment, whether about strengths or interests or personality. What are some of the ways that we help students and tools that we use that are helpful? Can you talk to that, please?
Absolutely. We do love to help students with assessment. And so those are different things. We want students to come in and go through those with a coach so that they understand and are able to process their results. We have used the college version of the Strong Interest Inventory. We've also used some personality assessments and really unpacking those with students in a deep way. The version of the Strong that we use ties it into areas of study for students, potential areas, and it gives them something to react to. And so we want students to come in and go ahead and have those opportunities to self-assess. And in fact, we require students to come on in and have that appointment when they receive their assessment results so that they understand what those actually mean and that they have agency in the process, including in the way that those are interpreted.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Heidi. Mike, some students right now are thinking about the business school, and is there any advice you might give to a student to increase their chances of being accepted into the business school?
So do well in class, do very well in class. It is highly competitive. Probably one of the most important things is my colleague Whitney Millhouse has been in contact with all the sophomores who have indicated interest in the School of Business. With the application period, it's about to come up. It'll be the first week in January and will close right before classes start. So if they get an email from Whitney Millhouse, they should read it and pay attention to it because it'll have all the deadlines. It will have all the components. The other thing too is in the application process, take the time and do it well. You know, part of it is you heard when Heidi was talking about the resume reviews that are going on. A resume is part of the application process, and the resources are available to do it well. So take the time, do a thorough thought of what you want to do. But again, I would say, Whitney Millhouse sends you something, read it.
Great. That's good, Mike. Thank you. Yes, do well in class. But yeah, remember, it's not just an automatic process. It's one where you have to show your best self. So just like the application to Wake Forest, you have to do that for the Wake Forest Business School. All right, a couple really last quick questions. Heidi, around, is it possible for a student, if they want to actually like work in sports, to work actually in the Wake Forest athletic department and do some kind of internship. I know we have a lot of students who do that, but maybe you can speak a little bit to how would one make that happen if they wanted to do something like that?
Yes, our athletics department loves to hire our students, and it's an exceptional opportunity to gain professional experience during the semester. So on their website, there is information about some of their internships. And the analytics piece, I would want to hold and make sure that I give specific information on. But most people start on the marketing side. And what I would do if it were my child is go ahead and explore that particular internship that's posted and then begin having conversations. Analytics, as we know, is very important across the board, across the economy, but there is really a high emphasis on that in athletics. So I commend your student for seeing that opportunity and exploring it. I would actually, if they would like to contact me, Bronnie Queen is one of the people that I would put them in touch with. And so I'd be happy to direct them.
Great, thanks.
I'd like to add one thing on that too. Volunteer. There are so many volunteer opportunities in the athletic department for working games. If you want to be in marketing, you want to be in broadcast, or you want to try it or see how it is to put on an operation, that's another avenue. It doesn't have to be formal. It can be informal. You get connected, you do a couple, you're like, I really like this. Then you can start pursuing. Gets back to the exploration side.
That's great. That's really good. Yeah, any way you can break things down into small chunks and not have them all be formal right from the beginning. First, you make a bunch of connections, you realize whether you like it or not, and then you can, through that process, get to something bigger and longer. All right, we have a clock that's ticking. There are lots of other interesting questions that we'll try to get to offline, but Heidi, I'm going to give the mic to you to let you have a great conversation with Paulina, okay?
Oh, thank you so much, Andy. And Paulina, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you
Paulina,
for having me.
Oh, we are so glad you're with us. And Paulina has made time out of her academic schedule. This is, I know, a very thick time in the semester. So thank you for being here. Paulina, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but by way of introduction, will say that you are your intended major, double major, comm and studio art.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like you to introduce yourself a little bit more, where you're from.
So I'm from Englewood, New Jersey, and I am currently a sophomore at Wake Forest. And I'm interested in pursuing a career with graphic designing or doing like merchandise branding or something like that. I don't know yet, but I've had a lot of experience with that in the past year of my life due to my past internship, which is luckily turned into a job that I have right now while I'm still a student at Wake Forest. And it has been such an amazing experience growing and learning through Wake Forest academics, as well as through the new applications and software I'm using at my job.
So Paulina, there is so much to celebrate in what you just said. So I'm going to take it and roll it back, because what you just talked about was the internship that you already have had and how you kept it going, the momentum that you created for yourself. I would be interested for you to talk a little bit about your success strategies, because you didn't just apply to an internship.
Mm-hmm.
You had your own way of going about this. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I started applying for internships during like the second semester in March, and I met with the Career Center on probably a weekly basis to fix my resume, make my handshake, and it did push me a lot. I really didn't want to do this on top of all the schoolwork I had, and it was just really time consuming, but I knew it would pay off in the long run. And then once I got all those polished, I started applying for internships, and I probably applied to 18 internships, which was a lot. And half of them I didn't hear back from. I probably heard back from maybe 5 of them. Not really, but it came in like when waves. And then I got past the talking stage for 2 or 3 of them. One of them I was required to do like a competition, and it was like a timed thing that I didn't end up getting a call back for, which really hurt. But one of the internships I really wanted, I got a rejection letter to, and it caused me to apply to like 3 more very quickly because I was like, I need to keep on like applying. And even though there was some setbacks, I knew that if I kept on pushing myself, I can eventually like find an internship, even though it was a really long process. And luckily, after I applied, one of the 3 I applied to, after I heard back, I got a interview for. And apparently, I didn't know this at the time, but he was a Wake graduate, and he graduated in 2009. And the interview went well, everything, and we started working. I started working on the internship in early June. And then in mid-July, after doing a lot of work for him, he gave me a return offer for the school year. And I was so happy because on top of like actually getting an internship this past summer, I loved what I was doing, and I learned so much more like than I would have with the way curriculum, because it's actual stuff I would have applied to real life, and it was in real life situations, which I was so grateful for. And my boss and I were still very close. Like we meet probably 3 times or 4 times a week. It is really time consuming and demanding, but he understands that I'm a college student still, and he knows that my schedule, like he knows my schedule and how to work around it. So it's been really good. But if I didn't push myself and get all those rejection letters, I wouldn't have applied to the internship I had now. And I think this internship that's just now with the job has taught me more than I ever could possibly ask for.
So I hear a whole lot in there, and I'm going to see if I can tease out some points because it is quite a story of grit and resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So one, apply, apply, apply. And even though I hear the hurt in the rejection, but you sort of had some strategies to deal with that. And I think that's important for parents to hear about, that when students, maybe some strategies to encourage students, because rejection is part of the process.
Mm-hmm. And I also think my parents played a big role in this, because they weren't like really pressuring me more so to really get an internship, but my mom kept on telling me to like keep on trying, and like no matter what. And she'd ask for like updates, as well as my dad, about like, oh well, how's it going, like have you heard back from anything, have you met with the career center yet? But they were the ones that like, besides the career center and besides like myself, they were like also like trying to keep updated with my life and how that was going. So it kind of motivated me to give them new things to update them about. So they were really helpful too. They always, if I got a rejection letter, they'd support me and just tell me to keep on applying and not give up. And then would encourage me to meet with the career center again, just to polish my resume, look at my cover letters and see if I can tweak anything. Follow-up emails is a big one too, just all that. But I think the moral of the story is that without the determination that I had for wanting to get an internship, without that, like I knew it wouldn't come to me if I didn't try and if I didn't work. And no matter how hard like I thought I was trying, I can always push myself a bit more.
Paulina, I love hearing all of your self, you have a very strong spirit, and pursuing and being determined is just part of who you are. And I love that. I think that is a very important quality, and to hear about how parents can support their students who are moving through this process. One of the things that I think was really critical in your story was this idea that you were willing to reach out and do informational conversations. And in fact, one of the things that I know is that you've had other opportunities that have come your way because you've been willing to go ahead and have those, what some people would call networking or professional relationship conversations. And I wonder if you could speak to how important that is, because you and I both know that that is not something students often want to do.
Mhm. So networking it's a scary word and it's a scary term to use, but honestly, I think getting over that fear and just realizing that it needs to be done. So why be like fearful of it and not do anything? You can be fearful of it and still network, but it's very important to like get your name out there. And my parents have always told me that too. So whenever the opportunity comes, I try to like take it. And about a month ago, I want to say, I was in EDU 120 with Professor Robinson, and we were required to have informational interviews and such. And luckily, she set me up with Mr. Goldstuck, who runs a record label. And I've always wanted to work for a record label. That's probably my goal as of now in life. But and I had informational interview with him, and I met with him on a Friday, and then I met with him again on a Saturday. And even though it was a very hectic weekend for me, on top of school and work and parents' weekend, it was a lot. I still tried to make the effort to reach out and meet with him more. And luckily, that turned into an opportunity to work on a project of his, which is what I was doing for around a month. And it's probably going to resume in 2 months from now. But it was such an amazing opportunity in like even getting over that fear of like meeting someone new. And like, even though I feel secured now, I know that there's always more I could do and more I can pursue in life. So kind of just jumping out of that box and meeting someone like also in person, which was a huge jump from like the COVID era. Um, it was such a great opportunity for me. And now I have a relationship with this person who's in this industry that I'm pursuing. And I wouldn't have had that if I didn't have like taken that risk and talked to him.
Good.
So yeah.
And what I love about that story in particular is that that is a Wake Forest parent. And so going ahead and having those conversations with other people who are allies of the Wake Forest family, but are allies even of people's other families of origin is a really important thing to go ahead and have those professional conversations that may lead to some kind of an opportunity or may lead to more information. And I feel as if in those conversations you had both. And how do you feel about networking now that you had to do it?
I mean, it's still a little scary, but I feel a bit more confident in the skills I have learned from my previous interactions, that it just becomes easier with time.
Paulina, this was wonderful for you to share your story. I'm grateful. I love how you have just really taken off. And if you were going to give one piece of advice to a sophomore who hasn't gotten started and feels like they're behind, you and I both know about opportunities that are out there. What advice would you give to those sophomores?
Be aggressive with the search. Don't give up. If you don't hear anything back, it's nothing against you. It's probably these people don't have time or aren't looking into it. But if you stop the search, then you stop the pursuit, and you got to keep on trying.
I love it. That is very much a Wake Forest spirit. And Paulina, I am so grateful that you shared all of that with us and sort of this idea that we just keep going. That's who we are, and that's how success comes. And I'm really grateful.
Well,
and thank you for
so
making
much.
time tonight. I know you've got a lot of things going.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paulina. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks, Paulina. What grit. You're a worker, and really appreciate your taking the time to share with us. So thank you, Heidi, for that conversation. If I could maybe bring Mike and Stuart back, just want to wrap up with a final round of questions or one thought from you. So the main thought would be either you can pick which question, either if I had a sophomore and I was a parent right now and I was thinking about, which actually I do at another school, but if I do, what would I want them to be doing right now and heading into the holidays? What is it that I can do to help my child? That's sort of one general question. So right now, And then there's another question, which and you could answer both if it's short, just like any sort of big picture advice that you give just parents of college students right at this moment, and what can help them be a good supporter of their child and a good encourager to them in the process. So how about I'll go with Stuart, Mike, then Heidi. All right. So anything right now, right now, and then general advice for parents.
Well, I would say, since you're sophomores, most of the students have not finalized their major. I believe that's probably right. So I would very much be aware of what path that they're blazing here, because that major selection is going to determine a lot down the road, and you want to make sure that there's a market for it. And so understanding as much as you can about the market, looking at data, talking to employers, faculty, career coaches is very important. And I think long-term, they need to apply, back to what the student was saying, but kick them off your payroll. That'll motivate them.
Nice. That's good, Stuart. Thinking ahead. All right, great.
Right.
Let's go to Mike.
Yeah, that's an easier said than done, Stuart. We'll talk later.
Yeah, he's got young kids.
Yeah, and so I think as parents, what could really be good is have a conversation with them about what they enjoy, what they're good at, and what their desires and skills where they match. Because you can be really good at something and not enjoy it, and you can really enjoy something and not be good at it. So where do the two come together? Those conversations are so important. But the other thing I think that with the holiday break coming up is have your student engage with professionals in your personal network. Have these informational conversations that Paulina just talked about, they're less scary when they already know who the person is, but now they're leading a conversation about what do you do? How did you get there? What do you like about it? And those kinds of conversations with these professional contacts can be really important.
That's great, Mike. Thank you. Appreciate that. And you, Heidi?
I would say two things. One, completely agree, Mike. We actually have students make an ally map and then go ahead and put a date by which they will actually have that conversation with one of their allies, just to learn more about careers, but also to get clear about the kinds of things they're interested in. It's very reciprocal in nature. And then I would add, the thing that I talked with the sophomore about today was trying to get some kind of a professional project over the winter break, be that a micro internship on a website called Parker Dewey or Catch a Fire. One is for startups, Parker Dewey, the other Catch a Fire is for nonprofits. An opportunity for students to get a little bit of professional experience, bolster that resume. And the other part of that is that sometimes there are projects that can be done over winter break with nonprofits or organizations in your hometown, and they can gain professional skills that then we go ahead and add in the spring to their resume. And career momentum's a little bit like a snowball. It starts with a little bit, and then it gains both seriousness and momentum as it moves along. And so the more students can get some experience that goes on that resume, that also it leads to other things down the road. So to the degree that they can use that time over winter break and have their resume together before they leave, I would love that.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Stuart. Great advice and a great reminder to me with a sophomore in college that I am going to talk to her about all those things very soon. So I'm going to apply those. It's actually sort of funny. I actually do this for a living, but don't always apply it to my own children. So I got to find a way. So anyways, thank everyone for being here, and I'll pass it back to Brad.
Andy and everybody else, Mike, Stewart, Heidi, and Patrick Sullivan, who's kind of behind the scenes making all this kind of work together. We appreciate everybody's time. I think my final comment would be Paulina's comments I thought were spot on. Persevere, network, and then what you mentioned about her parents and supporting her, but not pushing. I think it's just a perfect balance of everything. Just want to give a quick note that this program tonight is going to be recorded or has been recorded. You'll be able to see it and go back and review those things a little bit later in the week when it gets posted. But we want to thank everybody across the board for your time this evening, and thank you for your time. And if there's any information that you might have or questions, please reach out to us and we'll follow up later on. Thank you now. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.